is this? 2001? No, what? Make it iconic. No, for real, make it iconic. Like seriously, you have to do that. Like that's part of your job. What the fuck? MM7 began with an idea. If you're joining into this video and you're new to this channel, click off the video and don't watch the video. If you are not a fan of MM7, do not watch this video. Click off right now and don't waste your time. This video is not going to be for you. It's going to be for those who are in my Discord server. MM7 is not one of your it's not one of your three novel studios that finish in like say five to three novels and such. It finishes in like a many series. It's a long series. Now, for those who don't know, my name is Viz/Magnium. I'm the project. I've been at this for 7 years. Welcome to Frell's newest vlogs video. This will be a discussion about why MM7 matters. Why does MM7 have to matter? Why does it? Why should it matter to you? Why should I teach you this? Why should I tell you this? So we're gonna get into that right now. Beware, when this video was originally recorded, my voice, I was sick, so when we get to the next part, you're going to notice my voice sounding different, so enjoy. In order to be expansive, I had biases, but I also had to open my head because it was not going to do it for me. And I was a kid and I was thinking everything should be smiles, should have happy endings. Sadly, MM7 is not one of those stories where it finished with like three, great novels, happy ending, or maybe an ending where it leaves you on a cliffhanger. You're like, I wonder when the next thing is coming, and it never happens because that's how this special is. But I didn't do that. I kept going with MM7. I said, what if I made this thing my entire life working on this one singular story? And so I did exactly that. Instead of finishing it within less three novels with one saga and the second saga, the first saga being the introductory, the second being my last, like the finale, like the final boss fight, it was gonna be my, like the Lord of the Rings. Like I wanted to be like, oh, I love the Lord of the Rings, I wanted to do something like that. But of course, I was young, so that's what I thought at first. And I thought maybe the industry was all like Harry Potter, there's a Harry Potter for every country. Of course, I'm stupid. I was stupid. I was 8 years old, and I thought that was exactly how everything worked. I didn't know there was an industry for it. I didn't know all the requirements, the grammar. I don't know about character design. I don't know about character making or character design. I don't have any of that shit. I had none of that experience when I started. I was only beginning, practice it. All I had were, I love sci-fi, I like science, I like space, I like Jupiter, and I liked seeing my character have green eyes, and I want my character to look like me. That's how it started. The main character was not even a guy, it was literally a girl. The main character was named Aphelis, but first, funny enough, Aphelis was not named Aphelis Hypus before she became Aphelis Hypus. Aphelis Hypus was the main character of MM7 for the meanwhile in the beginning, and her name was Melissa. Yes, Melissa. Melissa came to be from me, again, with my limited vocabulary at 8 years old when I was trying to make it, because I had the first stick figures and drawings and shapes and little terribly drawn backgrounds. But that's what I was working with. I only my notebooks, my composition notebooks, my spiral notebook, and a singular plastic folder which was meant to keep my artworks in. But because I wasn't exactly that organized back then, I barely cared about organization, and whatever I wrote came on like sticky note. I placed the sticky note on the journal, and that's how I did it. That's how I started my story. Yes, context cards, sticky notes, terribly placed notebook pages that are not even in order. That's how I started MM7. It was Melissa, which I came up with, was like, alright, Magnium will have Magnus as his first name, and the other second main character would be Melissa, because it was something that I liked saying a lot when I was 8 years old. Melissa was the name of a girl which I knew in school when I was younger, but that was just because every singular name back then was very stereotypical and I only knew stereotypical names. So all I had was Melissa, Croy, Cole, Alan, Lil Nell. We had, well, my name wasn't stereotypical, it was a weird one. We had Louise, Rodriguez, Giselle, Diana, literally all those names, those sort of names, Patricia, Jack. I could keep going along with like names like that. Those were the characters' names back in the beginning when I made MM7. More than just, what is it called again? I didn't want it to be something, but when I was a kid, I was like, it should be like Lord of the Rings. It should be like Captain Underpants back when the Head was about to pop in. We had Michael Ray. We had The Legend of Zelda. You could say all those. We had all those sorts of things pop up in the time, and the Apple store was like booming with a bunch of the famous game apps that you saw in the 2010, which were popping up and booming in like Angry Birds, and that's what all I had in my head. And all of my knowledge came from creepypasta videos, on kids game videos, gameplay videos, and my favorite YouTubers back then in the 2010s, which I, by the way, never ever memorized the names of, because sadly I was a kid. I thought everything on this place and everything in this world should only be like, you see this once and you're gone. That's how I thought it worked. So whenever people ever mention if they think MM7 came from inspiration, no, it should not. It shouldn't have ever came from inspiration. MM7, which again, early on, was slowly adding in elements that were not mine, that I tried to copy off of already masterful pieces of literature in history, human history, which I tried to copy off of when I started. And again, you must imagine where I started to feel icky about it back when I started getting judged for trying to copy phrases. But you go, why and who would go out to me and say these things, that I should stop copying people and should stop copying from legends, which a lot of people are copying from. They're copying from legends and publishing books back then. But again, that was my really stupid, rigor, and that was my stupid mind back then, which didn't think further than just copy what you think is already famous and make a living off of it. Which, again, I was 8 to 7 years old. I did not know better. So whenever people say if MM7 is handcrafted and naturally made, yes, it was naturally made. No AI. It did not start in 2023. People think it started in 2023 just because there's finally an accessible document of the story online now. Because sadly, if everything I wrote down in journals were only written down in journals, who's gonna read my story, and how would I pass the story on if it's all stuck on a journal where my writing is not even that legible and not even readable? So I began to type it in to a document only after almost a decade later, because I was too lazy, or the time was impossible and I couldn't pull it off. And these are again, MM7 is a piece of notes, ideas, redesigns, remaking everything. I had to fix everything. I had to rewrite stories over time, and I had to fix all of those first things. And people would go, where are the first instances of MM7? MM7's instances that first came did not get saved over time. They were crippled, and lots of my old pages, notes, and stuff like that went to the trash. Rain went all over my stuff. I lost it. My parents did not take good care of the documents, and I didn't take care of my documents, and those documents got lost to time. And once you lose those, you no longer have the original source material that you started from, and that's what's going to keep poking me to this day, is not having those original source materials that I not even take seriously back when I was younger. So I'm going to regret that for the rest of my entire life. If people think that this thing isn't a serious thing, check again. This thing had memos, had personal feeling into it. There were constant reviewing. I even tried showing it to people, but sadly, in the beginning days, we're gonna start from the beginning. That did not exist. There was no such thing as a YouTuber company. There was no corporate world yet in YouTube. It was the 2010s. Every single meme, joke, trend back then was outdated. We still had flip phones. We still relied on flip phones. The smartphone was only introduced literally 5 years back from where I started. So in 2007, literally, the public marketable smartphone only existed until 2007. So in 2012 was a different entire world. All of my emotion architecture was very loose, terribly designed, terribly done and taken. It was in fear of isolation. I didn't want to be lonely, and my inspiration was incredibly sporadic when I was young. So I can say this clearly about myself. The younger self would not go and say, "Hey, older self, stop saying that about me." He would not say that. He would go, "Yeah, I agree." That's how, yes, young me was starting to get there. Because to be able to write MM7, I had to learn about very unfortunate things that I should not have touched upon when I was a kid before I entered my teenage years. And this was around, let's say, 5 years. So I have 5 years to get to digest everything about this world that I could reach when I was 7 years old and before I was 12. And what happened was the most consequential era of my time when I hit the teens, and you'd know why if you knew my story. And the Projectian, again, we're gonna go over that, is inspired by M7. It is about a walking difference, but M7 goes through politics, depression, sexual harassment, very dark themes, terrorism. It goes into sadness, betrayal, world politics. It goes into abuse, mental hierarchies, as well. Again, we're talking about a primitive era. MM7 started with a lot of the scenes being written by me, talking about war, protests, broken love, genocide, heroes and villains, and then the fact that there are no such thing as heroes and villains, because sometimes some of the worlds that these people believe to be heroes in, they're like a terrorist for another, where they think their worlds go this way. And if you were to do exactly what you are doing from your homeworld to their homeworld, they'd probably think of you as a terrorist. And sadly, that's how it goes. It's like suicide in a different planet months, but I delved into a series where there were Cassilians involved, and Cassilians is an alien race that I delved into, which got into themes of suicide being ratified and justified, which is awfully disgusting here, which again should not be justified. But sadly, my story goes into that and says, well, I don't care. If you need, you have to see the real world. You have to see all these sorts of mindsets to understand, to be wise, be familiar, and stay in character. Learn to push through those hard narratives and those hard times and make sense of it. Like, you are no longer kidding around. You can take it maturely, and you're not going to go around yelling at people saying, "Hey, you're rude, you're dumb," and start hating people for no reason because you think it's justified. No. The story isn't about reading only terrible, disgusting things. The thing shows a lot of things about, again, as for motivation, inspiration, dedication, consistency, creation, again, a burden of love, a burden of creation. The responsibilities that I had to take upon when I wrote the first scripts, which again were not properly done in the beginning, was something I had to delve into, learn about better off, because I had to look into videos about how authors would write their stories and how authors would get laid off from their work, or how people had to slowly get used to having to deal with their viewers' demands and rewrite their stories the reviewers want them to write them. But for me, I got paranoid and I said, no, I'm writing the story the way I want. I said that at 9 years old. That was when I began taking it seriously. At 9 years old, because after the first 2 years, which were uneasy, really very kind of empty. It's just empty. It just doesn't make sense. On the personal side of things, I was doing great. My passion side of things, I was doing terrible. Family side was going great. It was amazing. But for the story MM7, I had to delve into really dark themes. I opened my mind to newer, other higher level thinking objectives and schemes that were going on with the story. So whenever I started again taking this seriously, I started to care about my grammar. I started caring about the slangs, and sadly I hit again when I was 9, I was still biased, I was still young, I was still trying to stop copying people, because that's when I started to get annoyed about copying people, because people would poke me a few times and say, you copied this phrase from the Avengers. I'm like, that's Stan Lee's word. I didn't copy it. They said, yes, you did. And so of course I changed it. Now again, this was the beginning. Before I started making M7 take this humongous and very explorative nature later on when we get into the Geostorm Saga, which is an incredible milestone pivot moment taking era part of the series, where it hit into amounts of climaxes, new sciences, new physics, new all these crazy sort of powers and abilities of your that have never been again visited such like before ever in human history, in the history of literature, which I wanted to compete against, and this only happened during my teens, but we're starting into the beginning first year. When I was 9, I was like, okay, fine, I'll start taking it seriously. And when we get back to the character designs, Magnus, Magnium, and Frell finally was the names I wanted to use for the main characters of the series. Problem. MM7 started out as a simple science fiction story about an adventure between this guy and a girl working together to, fight off the evil, and that's exactly how the story started at first. I'm gonna tell you exactly how I started to think that went wrong. So I was like, you know what? What if it was multiple worlds? Multiple worlds and multiple characters, and they're all main characters. What if I made up a language for the characters? And what if I did not give them hair like normal human hair? What if they weren't exactly fleshy and made out of organs, but retaining that human look? I also began to hate using Melissa as a Frell's name because I kept going in between a Frell's and Magnium. And if anyone wants to know where I got a Frell's from, the name for a Frell's has Aphellas. Hellas. It also came from Frell, Hella Frell. Yeah. And her round hair was like shaped like a letter A, but you rounded the pointed part of the A. And I was like, Frell, Hella, Frell, yeah. And that's when I came up with that scheme for her main phrases, where she was like saying Frell, yeah. And that was when I was 8 years old. But at 9 years old, that's only when I solidified that phrase. And as Magnium was gonna be just Magnus and Magnium. Magnium came from, because I liked Magnium. I was like, Magnium. I like that. I was like, yeah, it sounded very sharp, like a triangle. Magnus sounds serious. It sounds like a man in a suit. But I was like, I don't want Magnus Magnium to just be the next anime protagonist with the stereotypical, the black hair and the black eyes with the white skin and stuff. Like, no, I don't want Magnus Magnium to be that way. So I was like, how do I incorporate myself without making it so stupidly bland? So when I was working on Magnium in the beginning, I was like, okay, so he has a tan skin, black hair, green eyes, and he likes wearing a jacket just like me. But I was like, it doesn't make sense. Why would I make him wear things that humans wear? This is science fiction. But I also don't want to be like Star Wars and go, he has some random lightsaber and that's his main weapon, because I almost gave him a lightsaber. So I was like, what if it's very heavily themed about medieval themes? He has a sword, he fights with a sword, but it's like a cyber sword and it's not very Star Wars. What if he doesn't go, hell yeah, he goes, Frell yeah? But what if he's not like in the main characters, which are usually very nervous and cocky main characters in anime back in the 2010s? I was like, no, I don't want it to be like that. So when I was younger, I was like thinking, what if I make him a deadpan, emotionless character with black hair, tan skin, green eyes? He wears some sort of robotic hoodie, but it's like the hoodie is like it's like white and blue, like the future. That's what I saw, and I was like, okay, a cyber sword, and it's very medieval, but it's not like he looks like he's obviously a Padawan from Star Wars or something. So I gave him no rope, and I gave it a superhero cape. You start to see where I'm starting to get the Alter-Nethrodonian outfit and armor designs from. I was like, I don't want to copy any of this stuff. I'm gonna make it my own. So I gave him gauntlets, which would roll up from his arm and would exactly, explain this. I also wanted to go, a fella should have light dark skin, dark blue hair, beautiful purple eyes, some round oval, smooth and pretty look, easy to look at face, but not so where it looks like a Hollywood star like the movies I saw when I was 8 years old. And I was like, I don't want her to be this disgusting model. I want her to be a character you can aspire to be. and I want Magnium to be a character you feel related to, but in a very weird way. And I wanted to show isolation, so I was like, what if Magnium didn't know Phyllis, and what if Phyllis was also lonely as well? Because I hated the stories back then, where it's like the girl always had her friends, and she always felt like an outcast. And suddenly she meets this one main character dude, but again, always happens in many American stories, Japanese stories. They meet together, and she's like, "Oh, I don't like you or anything." And Magnium was like, "Yeah, sure, okay." And then they slowly get together. I don't like that. So I was like, so what if they're both lonely? But she has a background history. She's not like, oh, a peppy girl with like history. I have friends and stuff, and I feel like I'm alone. But she's not really, and just randomly falls in love with the main character because that's how the story goes. Nope. I was like, what if she's also lonely? What if Magnium's also there? But they don't think that. So I wanted to give that a spin. It's like, what if they don't think they are? But they're fine with being alone. They're already past and they're grown up. They don't fucking care. They don't want to care about that. They're going to start off with their journeys, and they never meet until they have that accidental meetup and go, hi there. But instead, again, I started making this meetup language for MM7 in the beginning. I was like, what if instead of saying, hi there, hello there, hi, welcome, I was like, what about Resolid, Arel, Resolid, Bovi? You start to see where I'm piecing it from. But then you go, where'd you get the hyphens? Where'd you get hypus? Where'd you get Nethrodia? Nethrodia comes from the inspiration of, again, I made it up. That's when I started to make my ideas come from nothing. So it's like, okay, so I have those characters, they're great. Phyllis, and I was like, okay, usually the male character is taller than the girl character. And MM7 was like, no. The girl character is gonna be taller than the guy character. That barely happens. What if the female character is stronger than the male character? But we're not gonna go, oh, she's so scary. Oh, I'm so nervous around her. No. So I was like, fuck that. We're gonna make the character already be used to her. Take up the atmosphere. Not scared. Though she has this difference. She's like, yeah, I like this. But not, oh, I'm gonna fall in love because it's the main character and that's how the story should go. No. So I moved on from that. So, once I had that going, I was like, what are some cool things I can do? And I was like, why, oh, by the way, for those who ask why the FLS sides are not blue and instead purple, it's because Nethrodonians that are like Alter-Nethros in the story, Alter-Nethrodonians or Alter-Nethrodonians are Nethrodonians that came up with more Chetherdonian features, which, again, Chetherdonians have a correlation to the color purple, which is why Phyllis's eyes came out more purple. It is more likely for an Alter-Nethro to have purple eyes because of, again, the Chetherdonians being the predecessors of Nethrodonians, in case anybody wants to know that too. So, going back to that, I also was like, okay, there's Magnium. It has this deadpan, he's kind of tan, but not like so dark tan. Like you can visibly see the good, beautiful details of him. But in the series, he was originally a little more whiter because he's Nethrodonian. Later on in the series, he has a little more of a tan because the projectionification of him came later. But we're not going to get into that because that's spoilers. We're talking about the creation of the beginning of MM7. MM7, again, so I again to take it as a project instead of like a hobby. And I was like, I want this to be my life's work. And I still don't get a shrap about how the industry works. So I was like, maybe it's so easy. I can just go find somebody on the street to make this book for me, help them or like make it, and we work together to make this book and happen. Like sell this book and we suddenly I'm famous or something. No. Of course, that's not how it worked. It was the 2010s. Duh. A lot of the social medias were young. Duh. A lot of them didn't even exist. A lot of the famous people that we know didn't even exist. Literally, they did not. And I also want to get to this point. MM7 originally didn't just begin with something like, I wanted this to be like a, again, I didn't want it to finish in 3 novels. So I was like, how do I make sense of the story when I made this one planet called Nethrodia? I was like, Nethrodia. Should there be a final boss? Should they fight off an invasion of their planet in the finale and the two get together or something, or maybe they kiss, whatever, whether they make out, or they get along, or they turn into a couple. No. 7-7 took a different approach. So instead of following that very stereotypical way of ending stories like science fiction stories, because usually science fiction stories love to delve into hardcore scientific research, I was like, what if you fuck over and don't actually follow the fuck about how hardcore world building worked back then in the 2010s, which was have this hot cyberpunk dude, a hot as Frell model looking bitch ass, Frell looking black girls, something like this, or white girls, and oh look at me. They two get together, they fall in love halfway through the season, fight off a villain or a kidnapping scene or something. No, I was like, no, I don't want this to be this stupid story. I was like, MM7 should be unique. So I was like, what if I make it more like Star Wars? I was like, nah. It shouldn't be more like Star Wars. It shouldn't be like Cyberpunk either. It shouldn't be like Akira. It shouldn't be like Lord of the Rings. So I was like, okay, how do I spin MM7 into something really unique? So instead of following that with the two characters I already have, I was like, we're gonna make it where it's multiple planets, unique city names, their unique language, their unique appearances, without making go, it should have ugly monsters with octopus features. No, that's stupid. It has literally in this naming saying octopus. That's a human thing. So how do I make it appear to be that way, but without doing it? But people ask that question to me a lot, so we're gonna answer that question for you. So I was like, what if I work on every single small detail? If you're gonna go, what do you mean by work on and rework every single small detail? I decided to go, we're gonna rework every single thing that I learned possible. And I was 9 years old when I did this, and say, I'm just going to reinvent every single concept that I knew about what literature was and make it my own way. Yes, that's exactly right. I was like, I'm going to rewrite how I think the science fiction should work, how I think the romance stories should work. I should rewrite everything. I reworked how cities should work. I rewrote politics. I rewrote all of this. I was like, I don't care. I want my story to be unique. But I want to make it look like it made sense and the world had sense. Nethrodia, again, the planet we're talking about, which is later, again, I said, turned into multiple planets. I was like, let's make it where the characters are in, like, they're dealing with multiple planets, and there's not because, oh, I have an alien species and I'm riding on some huge slug monster that's taking me to another city, or I'm gonna go onto my Back to the Future scooter and suddenly make this the entire premise of the city. Like, well, this is this Back to the Future scooter thing that they go on to transport themselves across the science fiction city. I was like, no, that's stupid. Highly unoriginal, is what I said to myself. So I rewrote that. I made it ships that they can use that are not like Star Wars ships. Duh. And I was like, and then we rework how the cities should look like. It should look like this highly complex, highly compact city and building designs and signs and posts and cars and all that. Like, no. That's not how it should work. 7-7, I decided to rework that. I said, no, this is how it should be. Yeah, you must imagine how many professionals probably would have panicked if they saw me go through this and go, you're being too ambitious. I said, I don't give a fuck. I'm gonna do it my way. And I was 9 years old, by the way, for anybody who wants to know. This is not for current MM7. This is when I was 9 years old. I had this in my head when I was 9. Nobody gave a shit when I was 9, by the way. For those who are wondering, has anybody helped me during that? No. MM7 was all done by me. Before we get into the second saga. The Devon saga was finally named. I gave it the Devon. And you must imagine what people would have thought I would have called the story MM7. Yes, MM7 was not originally called MM7. It was originally called a few different names, and you must imagine how that went. It could have been called Alien Kid, the Space Cowboy. It could have been called Delta 7. It could have been called Pengrade Jelly. Yes, those were the names I worked with, but I gave it MM7. Because you must imagine, wait, didn't that reference a team of people that you said were called Team M7? Yes, that's right. I was like, What if it's just not 2 characters and a group of 7 characters, but we see them as heroes, but there are different multiple planets that they have to deal with. It's not all like, oh, Star Wars or Back to the Future or Cyberpunk or Akira or Lord of the Rings. There's unique base systems, unique transformation systems, and it's like, oh, it's not Dragon Ball either, by the way, for those who want to know. It's like unique transformation systems, a pulse system, their own language, their own symbols, their own way of saying hi, which isn't hi. They say presulil, and when it's bye, they say bovi or bavi arel or Alter-Nethrodonian, and or asemrades, which it's like something really, again, relating to the Khether-Konican language, which comes from the Khether-Donians that predecessed the Nethrodonian human race. And yeah, I came up with that. So I made a team of 7 people, and I said, you are named Magnus Magnium, Frell Is Cytarone, Cyclonus Hypus, Cyclone Hypus, Hyka Kedra, Star Kedra, Esotech Hypus. Those were the original M7 members. Before Martino came in to fill in that spot, or Kikasha came in to fill in that spot in future sagas. But since we're talking about the beginning, we're going to keep with the beginning. MM7 was, again, becoming very ambitious. I was 9 years old, and people were starting to notice that at school, I've been not so good of a student, and I was entering 3rd, 4th grade, 5th grade. You must imagine how I've been. So this will explain what I mean by this. In 3rd grade, I basically almost repeated the year because I flunked about 3 exams that I should have passed in 3rd grade. Now you know why I probably almost flunked 3rd grade. In 3rd grade, I also took an interest to video games, mainly browser games. Browser games were highly popular in 2010s. We still had flip phones. My dad still had a flip phone. Still had it in case. Smartphones were still novelty. We were like, thanks Steve Jobs. And we were like, Facebook sucks. But Facebook was still highly popular back then. We had MySpace, we had LiveWig, we had YouTube, we had, well, I think Musically was around, but we had Vines as well. Vines is where I'm gonna get to this. So during those times that I was putting it together in notebooks, sticky notes, I started to write it in notebooks and finally stopped doing the thing where I was like, oh, write it in a sticky note and everything will be fine. No, I was like, stop it, Viz. Start writing it properly in a notebook and then write it down somewhere else. Again, I didn't have access to Google. I didn't have access to Microsoft Word. There was no such thing as like the all the stuff we see. There's no such thing for me to like digitally save what I wanted to write down. And I didn't have my own account. I didn't have my own account until 2017, 2016. 2015 for my own Roblox account, but 2016 for my first account online for something anywhere. I was rather immature, and I also didn't have any. Again, that's not because your parents didn't give you it. No. I know forums existed. I know there were places where you could store such story writing data, but sadly, I was in tech society, and my family wasn't exactly there just yet. And I sadly didn't know this. I was still stuck in play on the field, sprint, write in your journals, and let the rain wet all of my stories. Because sadly, that's just when I started to like write it down. I was like, oh, I'll just keep it in my head. I'll just keep MM7 in my head, and it'll be all fine. It was not all fine. MM7 was no longer, oh, let's just keep it in my head. And so when I started to think that, oh, let's just keep it in my head, you start to notice where all my written stuff starts going to. My written stuff started to go into bags, grocery bags, boxes, closets, all that sort of shit. It was not being contained or even taken care of seriously. Even though I was starting to think of these genius ways. That's when I figured out, oh, let's call the Khether-Donians Kedra for the second name, Hypus for the second name. You go, where's Hypus from? Hypus comes from different influences like myself. Hypus is like for hyper, and plus it's like something that sounds very sci-fi, like Sorrel, Hurring. And I was like, what if you just instead flip that entire definition, how that goes, and go, let's make it very science fiction sounding. And I wanted personality in it, and I wanted it to be short, easy to remember, and easy to make icon of, like saying Bizuet Hypes, Labano Hypes. We had Lionel Hypes, Jonathan Hypes, we had Max Hypes, Cole Hypes, Akira Hypes, Miranda Hypes. You could literally add Hypes and would fit in just fine, except for the first name part. But Hypes has that touch, and Kedra has that. You can feel it sounds like something Caledonian with Kedra. It had a nice shucking to it, and Hypes had that Hypes. It sounded sharp and acute, like Nethrodonians are, sharp and acute, and Kedra for very chucked and very round sounding, and Nethrodonian's Hypes is like, it's like as the second name had this very sharp, very sound to it. So once I started dealing with that, I was like, this is great. And I wanted to make their helmets, and I made them round with like these two parts that were like flashy rectangles of sorts. And I also had like this other thing going for like the back of their helmets with like two stingers or sharp angle sides to them when I first made them. And so once I started working, I was like, let's make the armor white blue, and Caledonians have white pink. And again, this is when I started to accidentally care about gender here. I was like, alright, so the Caledonian should be an all-female thing, and Nethrodonian should be an all-male thing. You start to see where the white blue and white pink and white purple comes from, or purple, white, and black and blue, because it sounds edgy. Edgy, in my terms, which I found really quickly, edgy and petty could be the very mean and rude characteristics of these characters. And I was like, what if they weren't all stupid and not just go, oh, I don't know about this, I don't know about these other worlds, and everybody knows. So then I made Nethrodia this technologically advanced planet with him. I can go, oh, it's just another technologically advanced planet where everybody has flying scooters and flying cars and just stereotypical cyberpunk couple who's fighting evil out there. That's stupid. So I was like, well, we already have the 7 characters thing, but I was like, what if the team doesn't just already know each other? So I said I wanted one girl and boy. Yeah. So I was like, let's you know what? Let's go over to gender. And then I was like, okay, let's just make them genderless. None of them have gender. So I was like, screw over gender. I don't care. This was in the 2010s, by the way, when story making was incredibly like hitting its peak. It was gonna hit its peak in 2017, and it got all experimental. So when I was 9 years old and 10 years old, which I'm entering 10 by then, I was like, okay, so they don't meet each other instantly. All the Kedra characters with the second name, like Kedra, third Kedra, don't come into way later. And Phyllis Hypus and Magnium come way before. And Magnus Hypus has this thing where he has Magnus Hypus, because you go, why is Magnium in his name? Magnium comes after he is projectified later on. So he has Magnus Hypus as his names for the moment before it all turns into that really serious amount of things. I also wanted to get this clear. MM7, at first, I was like, I wanted to make, it wanted to be PG-13. I almost made it family-friendly, but when I was 7, I decided, you know what, how am I supposed to explore these themes if the thing isn't even going to be allowing me to visit such themes? So I was like, screw it, I want to make it PG-13. And again, you imagine when I was 9 or 10 years old, I was like, okay, maybe after 2 years of thinking, let's not just make it PG-13, my series is going to have something really serious in it. But I was like, I looked at the PG-13 ratings, which, funny, yes, I did research on that. At 9 years old, 10 years old, in a school library computer. And I was like, what are the limitations to what PG-13 can visit? And I saw, oh yeah, I could do a lot. But when I was 9 or 10, I was like, but what if it starts to block me? What if they start to say, it's childish, it's lame, it's slow, and it's all experimental, and my character's all like this? I was like, well, I'll just straight up make it TV anime. So I gave up on PG-13, and I was like, let's just make it for any person who's interested in reading a good story. So I screwed over age rating, and I was like, okay, we're gonna stick with this, which I said to myself back then. A science fiction story. There are swords, there are no bows. This is funny. In the beginning, I gave up on bows, because the bows were one of the hardest things that took me time to fork on. But I was like, screw it, there could be bows in, but I was like, but would that seem too stereotypical? So I made the bows have very specific functions where the bows can turn into literal hammers, and the swords can turn into blasters. And this was again in 2010s, very early on. I had these ideas in my head for years, I just couldn't make any sense of them until later on. Until I finally started working on them, and I could finally make them into reality, and so that's exactly what I did. So after making Magnium, a fellow typist, Isotek hypist, Cyclonus hypist, Cyclone hypist, Kaiju Kedra, and Star Kedra, and then I added Kashain. I was like, okay, Kashain, I almost said Kedra. By the way, funny enough, I was like, but what if all their names accidentally had Kedra at the second name? So you're gonna go, why is Kashain a thing? Kashain has a history for being the favorite word of Kia Kashain, which first exists as the first Caledonian that took the word from the creator of her, which is named Selodius, which was a projecting ancestor that invented the Caledonian race that later the Caledonian race made the Nethrodonian race after all. So when that occurred to me, I was like, I don't want her to have Kedra as her second name, so I replaced it with Kashain. Kashain. Kaika Kashain, Kikasha Kashain. You go, instantly you're given in Kashain. Yes. Kasha Kashain, which I decided later on should be the creator of Kaika Kashain. And I said, there's no reproductive organs in this world. They're all made in her body, but they still have this human aspect to them. They look to them. So I was like, so they're not reproducing. You instantly see how the series instantly became no longer PG-13. I was like, no. They're all made. They're all created. They're not born. No one's born. And in their politics, nope. Nope. Not the same. You must imagine how the hell did I even work with politics, school, police, hierarchies, money, capitalism. You must imagine how the hell did I do that trying to make this science fiction movie. So I was like, nobody cares. Nobody cares. So I started to rewrite how politics worked in MM7. I started to rewrite how like the education and intelligence system worked. So I was like, there are no such thing as schools in Nethrodia. There are no stores in Nethrodia. There's no money. Nobody fucking cares about that there. Yeah, that's exactly what I started with MM7 when I started writing it. So I was like, Nethrodia doesn't need that because they started working with the Cytarone system. The Cytarone system is based off of literally what it's called. Cytarone. That is exactly what it's based on. It's literally based on Cytarone. You go, what is Cytarone? They're gonna obviously ask me this one. Cytarone has Cyra, Sita, and Rone. Rone for drone, dole, and null. Neutral. Sita for, again, city, opolis, major. Major neutral network. Major neutral networking in a society where they don't rely on money to basically work off things. There's no such thing as incentive for like, oh, I'm gonna be rich and then suddenly feel like I'm better than everybody. No. In society, there's no such thing as who's higher. Oh, there's a law. Are they polices? Nope. Nope. Anybody in the photo there is already way past that. They're way past criminal activity. They're way past, oh, what if somebody says something online? There's no such thing as social media on Nethrodia. They all have their heads already zapping that to each other in MM7. They have that reason, like, oh, they're aliens. They have this psycho intelligence where they transmit their information. No, that's stupid. That's highly unoriginal. Just like DC is unoriginal. So I was like, let's screw that over. What if it's something to do with their helmets? They transmit these messages. We're just like, oh, it's a voice call. I'm gonna use a voice call for this. No. I was like, that's stupid. I also was like, screw over. Messaging, oh, let me send an image of me. Like, oh, my character's gonna do a selfie. No. I was like, I don't care. So I was like, screw over that. There's no such thing as social media in this world. Because they don't need it. They can already communicate. So that's when I was like, so what if the Nethrodonians were instantly able to recognize each other just by looking at each other and you go, oh, I see you. And boom. We have, they know their name, they know the name of the person that they're standing in front of. Their text already advanced, they have this suit armor, it's flexible, it fits to their body, and there's no such thing as obesity. There's no like, oh, I'm skinny, I need to look pretty. No, that didn't exist in Nethrodia. Doesn't exist. They're way past it. Because when Nethrodonians, again, are created, there's no such thing as, look, oh, I have to rely that my genes are going to be fortunate when I'm born. No. Nethrodonians were created, so they could be created the way they are. And most of them have this specific look inspired by Nethrodonians, which came right before them. So that's how I gave them that entire dilemma. I gave them that. So there's no such thing as, oh, he posted this really terrible post about me, said that I'm ugly on Instagram or something, or some alien social media network. There's no such thing as that. Major neutral network. So they had that. There's no, oh, I have a governor. My governor's voting for this new law to pass. Nope. So in Authority, there is no such thing as a voting or any of that. There's no king. There's no monarchy or dictatorship. Nethrodia is based off of different multiple leaders organizing and helping command the entire planet together, because the planet Nethrodia is very big. Because when I first made Nethrodia, I was like, it should be probably be bigger than Earth or smaller than Earth, but it should have multiple factions commanding it around. And again, no money, no schools, no I'm instantly born as a baby. They're all created, so since they're created, they can skip the infantile stage, they can skip the teenager. There's no such thing as that. And because they're not really made out of organs, they're not gonna go, oh, I have to go through puberty or mature. Once they're created, what they'll see is what they'll see. They have this information already inside them. You go, how the hell do they have this information already inside them if there's no such thing as organs? They're not experiencing. Wrong. Since the system has no such thing as the education system, again, it's the Cytarone system, it's neutral, there's no social media. By the time they look at something, that information is immediately transferred into their head. When a Nethrodonian is created, they have a helmet on their head, which ensures that whenever they are created, this was back then when Nethrodia had this primitive capsule system, would have their alien race, the member would go over there and look at them and stand in front when they were made. So whenever they go up, information is just immediately absorbed by their helmet, and it just immediately gives them all this intel that's siphoned with them. But you go, how the hell does that work? Alright, there's a science behind this. So they have this thing, they work off of, again, they work off of like the normal heavens or glycions or neutrons or anything. No, hypens. So I was like, screw over energy particles, I'm working with hypens. So when I went with hypens, I was like, okay, they'll have hypens. That is their energy source. They don't go, oh, I have neutrons, let's work with electrons. No. They go, let's work with mana or orbs or slicer juice or essence. No. I was like, that's unoriginal. So I was like, okay, let's call it hypens. And let's not make it go, oh, it's positive, negative hypens. That's stupid. That's unoriginal. That's human. So I was like, screw with that. Hypens should have their own physics capability. I was like, and here, this is when you start to go, alright, so we're mixing magic with science. So now it seems like it has magic elements, but it also has scientific elements. But then you go, how do you make sense of them getting intelligence if there's no such thing as a brain with neurons helping to keep all this information, but their helmet zapping it into them immediately when they go outside their capsule that they run from, which they are created from, which skips all their baby stage, their child stage, their teenage stage. They're immediately grown. You go, do they have reproductive organs? Like I said, none. They have no organs. They're not even fleshy. They're robotic, but they have the human appearance, but with slight differences. 1. Yesels, uterus, violferns, and again, just keep going on. I can list a bunch of different anatomy parts. So you go, wait, you worked on anatomy parts? Yes. I was like, they should not. Oh, let's just give him my character black hair, and this female character I started with brown long hair, and her name's Melissa, and the guy's called Magnus. Stupid, unoriginal. Well, so I was like, well, I already gave him Magnus Magnium, Frell Is Cytarone instead of Melissa, and their unique appearances of him being a tan, deadpan character with green eyes, black bioferns, and you go, what are bioferns? Bioferns are an alien form sort of hair that isn't like, oh, because there's like small strands sticked into their scalpel of their head or something. No. I was like, screw that over. That's pathetic. It's like, what if they go into fire and their hair burns, but their body's completely fine because it's their body? So fire ferns are special alien hair of sorts, which they call bioferns, Biofurns, that they could use, that is immediately as hard and as robust as their body is without their armor. Our body can resist it, and because the Nethrodia is huge, just like Kethras, which is another planet. Nethrodia and Kethras are planets. They have to handle, of course, heavy gravity. So you go, wait, why are we getting to gravity? To first explain the intelligence thing, we need to deal with the gravity and their anatomy. So in 7, I was like, I don't like it. I don't like the part where if they were to be on let's say, human planet, what if a human shot bullets and the robot body broke apart and they malfunctioned? What if there was a huge gravity chamber, or what if they were falling from way high up on a plane crash or something? What if a race member could just simply go and thrust this sword right into them and their robot parts are broken? So I was like, that's stupid. That's unoriginal. That's weak. That's not a good idea. So I was like, I'll reinvent how this works. Yeah, I reinvented how armor and how anatomy should work. So I was like, okay, so what if they were immediately stronger than diamonds, stronger than the hardest materials in the world, and their bodies are made exactly that way? And because Alter-Nethrodonians, which here is where I started making sense of it, because Alter-Nethrodonians came way before them and existed at a similar era of the Projectians, which again, remember, Kashain existed because of Solodius. She's already had a great knowledge of how Projectian metal is like. So her body is literally entirely made off of alternative Projectian metal. She is literally, again, the descendant, which was created by a Projectian king, which had multiversal power and reach. So this is where I can make sense of their incredibly robust bodies and nature, where the intellect could be easily stored in, like they were sucking in and absorbing the information, which you can call detective energy or detective hypens, or what I call 11D. 11D is a reactive substance, a reactive particle that can mend together with hypens, which I invented, 11D and hypens, and coessence and rhoessence and pevins and glycions, worked at first, which are, again, those are particle names, was the only particle that can mend together with hypens and stick together. So whenever a Nethrodonian moves or responds to something, it's like a rock. When a rock interacts with lava, and you could tell lava is destroying the rock. It's slowly melting the rock, or it's not melting the rock. It has chemical properties. That's how I made sense of their robust bodies and the way of how they absorb intelligence. Because their alien race is so sophisticated, they don't need to go, oh, what if their helmet is not there when they're in the capsule, and they suddenly lose and not retain the information they have when they're first created and made from a capsule from other members that recreate them. But then you go, but that seems like it's infinite. Yeah, that's when I get with how it goes scientifically here, in my own unique way. So I was like, okay, so 11 could be like something that helps stick to them, and it helps them remind, don't touch that, don't do that, don't react to that, don't try sticking to that. That's what 11D does. 11D helps Nethrodonians be aware that something's going wrong. And because their bodies are incredibly well packed and robust, they can handle bombs, explosions, bullets. If a human were to say assault a Nethrodonian with a group of people, or use a rocket launcher or something, or a small mini nuke, that wouldn't kill them. It wouldn't. So 11D is there to also help in case that might fail and their bodies react with the way we say their body's breaking apart, not bleeding, but they know something's going wrong. Like a bug when it reacts to something, warning them, or their body feeling wrong, saying, I don't like this, I'm probably going to die. And because they're doing, again, are taught necessarily there's no such thing as death, the only thing they think is that they'll probably be destroyed rather than killed. That's when I started changing up how death works in the entire series. I was like, well, they are mortal beings. They literally can live forever. So you're gonna go, okay, what the fuck did you just throw right there? Alright, here's how I'll explain what that means. So after you realize that they can use 11D to mend together their intelligence with their hypens inside their bodies, along with their metal that they're made out of, while they're created, not born, and can retain, and you said how energy is not infinite here, it's the same thing for here. You start to see where I'm starting to connect, how their bodies can only be destroyed because of Chetherdonians coming from Projectians, which are multiversal powerful forces, which influence the Chetherdonians. Like Kashain when she began the Chetherdonian race on Kethras, which then Kethras later accidentally creates the Nethrodonians that come after the Chetherdonians that came, again, the Chetherdonians that came after the Projectians. So, when that happened, I was like, well, 11D is finite and hypens are finite. So you go, well, that explains why Nethrodonians can live forever, because they literally can't age. Their bodies are made the way they are, right? Meaning they don't get wrinkles, they don't need any reproduction to say offspring. No, they don't have this social media system. They're organized, they know what's happening. Their helmets are the main way of messaging to each other, and if without the helmets they can still look at somebody and their body already retains that information by the time they have the helmet on. It's already like a main thing that helps them sync up their information with their body, so their body reacts when it says, oh, I know this person in front of me, without having to go, oh, let me just add you on Insta or something. No, it's stupid. So that's why there's no social media on that planet. With no education, there's no need to go through puberty to learn all this. With 11D hypens maintaining their bodies, that's how they retain immortality. Without even noticing, that's exactly what's happening to them. In the series, they're so used to how they're living that their immortality has never come up in their head, death has never come up in their head. There's no like, oh, politics, some extreme right-wing guy says something online. No, it doesn't exist. It's not familiar with them. So when I dealt with that, the Chetherdonians should have been similar, but I was like, the Alter-Nethrodonians are more male-looking creatures, and when a Nethrodonian comes out a little more Chetherdonian than normal, we give them Alter-Nethrodonian as something you can call him by saying, oh, you're an Alter-Nethro. But then I was like, but then you people are gonna go, what is Nethro? N-I-D-R-O. Nethro is the way of saying people in Nethrodia, rather than saying, oh, for the people, they say for the Nethros, or Nithros, or however you want to say it. If they say Nethros, but Nethros, that's how they say it with their accent. So that's how they called it. Alter-Nethro is faster to say than saying Alter-Nethrodonian, which is a mouthful. Nethro is a compressed way of saying Nethrodonian, and another way of saying the people. The Nethro. The Nethros. Spelling Nethros. Oh, those kithers. Kithers, K-I-T-H-E-R-S, is the way of saying, oh, it's a Chetherdonian right there. Look at all those kithers. Chetherdonians. That's how you can say Chetherdonian as well. Oh, he one of those kither frells. Now you're gonna start to see where I get into slang. So when I was 11 years old, you're going, okay, so now we can give slang a spin. We're like, well, all the system is so sophisticated, but it's not like, oh, it looks like a futuristic world. It's not like a Back to the Future again. It's not like a Star Wars, and it's like, oh, instantly they have the Force and they're evil. No, it's stupid. It's unoriginal. So I was like, okay, I got this. So once I started doing that and put those together, all those elements that I recognized together, and said screw all of that, after all the screwing over and getting used to like writing the story down, I started to work on how the story became more than just a simple theme of saying, oh, this character is about this and this and that. The story now becomes so complex that the themes no longer become sensible. Write down like, oh, can you describe MM7 in 50 words? Impossible. It's impossible. So you go, okay, what about the slangs you said earlier? I was first had to say why the story is hard to explain in the first place. First, which now you get if you listen this far enough. Subscribe to the YouTube channel if you haven't, and like the video to get this anywhere else. But if you now know all this and you went through all this and now you know why MM7 is so complicated for me, MM7 is not marketable. In the 2010s, it was not marketable, it was very drastically different. And slang's more another way of me getting very unique with words. After I already said, Brasilid should be high, Bobi should be by, or Azon Press, something like that. Or RML, or Neolandos. So I was like, okay, I got this working now, I need to figure out another way to do exactly what I need to do here, is that makes it cooler. So I was like, okay, give it slangs. Give it slangs that they know, because why the Frell would a Nethrodonian go, oh, why did the chicken cross the road? There are no such things as chicken in their world. There's no such thing as, oh, you a scholar? There is no such thing as scholar, student, home classroom, social media, influencer. There's no such thing as that in their language, because if it doesn't exist, why the shred would it be in their language? So I had to find genius ways of them describing themselves in very weird and damnifying situations with words that feel like it feels right. So I said, Shrigoroka, Frell, Strat, Shrell, Shrigoroka, Huaniga, Pushik, Pushun, Terrell, Durrell, Urrell. I was like, those should be slangs. And I was like, Orlasens, Bioferns, Nidro, Kethler, like Kither. I was like, yeah, Kither, Lings, Briga, Shrelling, Shredusha, Shui, Ipple, Opil. Different ways of them saying slangs for specific situations, like Phi, Rerio, Quantic, and Rigarita. So, Quince, and much more that I can list. So, once I started doing that, I was like, okay, we got this. We got something going. That's exactly just how I started MM7. And I think that should wrap up exactly what made MM7. MM7 was like a culmination of all those things. But I wish I could explain more further sagas, but the further sagas are just way too ahead and not within the reach of every one of my audiences that so far are not even caught up with the series, besides like 2 people that I know. But one of them doesn't care and one of them cares. If you subscribe to your channel right now, if you subscribe and give a like to the video, I'll probably show this to somewhere else. But if not, I'll keep this as a podcast explaining why MM7 is really important and why it's not just a few simple things so around there. And to read the rest of the page, it said that every part of the 7th is handcrafted and natural. This isn't a lore dump or a clone of Northern Universe's any mainstream creative media like those of Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, Naruto's Tiny Evil, or Captain Underpants. This is original mythology shaped by a decade of notes, voice memos, personal drawings, rigorous character designs, and constant reviewing, which is true, which I'm reading this off my website. The story folds itself into queens that live for eons, secret factions that crawl beneath the soil of other planets, and politics that are domestic in Earth, galaxies like ghost threads, from energy systems like Colas and Rose system to unspeakable Bluntfrogen particle. Every name, every symbol, and every city has weight, and there's no filler, there are only layers. And I wish I was kidding. Again, this website is not even kidding. I'm not kidding. When I worked on MM7, it only became heavier, and more heavy duty. The project was written by the Projectian, one creator with many names. That is true. These pages hold personal archives, emotional architecture, and futuristic language and linguistics built over years of isolation and inspiration. This world was made to breathe, to evolve, and it belonged to no one else. Because, well, I owned and I made the entire thing. What you're reading is the canon, unfiltered and uncut, which then I'll release later over the years when I finally get the spelling thing finished. MM7 invites you to explore things, walk through war, follow a suicide, know what power really means, forbidden love, genocide, drama, whatever frelling thing that happens. This isn't about heroes and villains. You'll figure this later when you realize nobody here is a main character. Nothing will go your way, whether you like it or not. That's literally just also another premise of the story. Step into this universe knowing one thing. Everything has a meaning. Nothing exists by accident. From symbols embedded into armor to the psychological tension between aliens, This is a story about what happens when divinity, technology, and morality all blur. M7 is a very definition of life to me, so I'll die trying to complete it. And if I do die during it, then farewell. Jubilee. And so that was my, I guess that's the note I left for people whenever they find it. Is that if I do die during this, then so be it. If you enjoyed the podcast or whatever, or video or whatever you want to call it, leave down your thoughts in the comments. And I hope this helps people who are much more nerdy and will actually give a shred about what the fuck I'm talking about and look at it in more serious terms. It's not easy because the series didn't start as just only drawing a bunch of stick people and a bunch of, sci-fi stuff and hardcore world building. Over time, I visited music, art, editing, social media, literally writing, and music production as a whole, gaming, and game making during MM7, and a lot of other studying that I had to do over the decade that it ran for when it ended in 2024. Because 2025 will be the year where I start to make it all happen. And of course, I'm not exactly in a stale spot, but that doesn't really matter. Because as long as I keep doing this shred, it's not like I'm going down without a fight. And people don't take me take me seriously, like haters that instantly rampage my comments. If you look into my background, I don't look like a pussy anymore, do I? When you read my history. So whenever I get to MM7, you can judge me, but you can never judge the story. That'll be it. Thanks for watching. That'll be it, and I'll end the video here. Hope you enjoy. That'll be my talk for today.